From the pages of MikeHuckabee.com, where you can read all my takes on the news of the day and sign up to have all my hot takes delivered to your email inbox twice every day, let's take a little look back at the stories that made up the week that was. This week, the official narrative about the origins of COVID was dealt another blow, hilariously so, as former Daily Show host Jon Stewart stunned late-night hack Stephen Colbert with some common sense that would have gotten you banned from social media not too long ago if you had said the same thing Jon Stewart did.
I think we owe a great debt of gratitude to science. Science has, in many ways, helped ease the suffering of this pandemic, which was more than likely caused by science.
Now, it goes on from there, but ever since Jon Stewart left The Daily Show, wannabes who came out of his orbit, like Colbert, have infested late-night comedy shows, turning them into one-sided DNC talking point lectures. One reason I always enjoyed sparring with Jon Stewart was that, like Bill Maher, while his politics are very different than mine, he managed to remain funny, fair, and pretty open-minded. And when he thought his own side of the political aisle was being ridiculous, he would even skewer them too. His one-time protege and pale imitator, Mr. Colbert, got a shock lesson in how far below Stewart's standards he is when Jon Stewart dropped the hammer.
There was a chance that this was created in a lab. There's an investigation.
A chance?
Well, but
oh my
if there was
God.
evidence, I'd love to hear it.
There's
I just don't know.
a novel respiratory coronavirus overtaking Wuhan, China. What do? Oh, you know who we could ask? The Wuhan novel respiratory coronavirus lab. The disease is the same name as the lab. And then they ask the scientists, they're like, how did this happen? And they're like, a pangolin kissed a turtle.
You know, almost as much fun as watching Stewart mocking the official COVID origin story was reading all the outraged tweets from leftists whose heads were exploding over hearing something on that so-called comedy show that didn't reinforce the approved narrative. Stephen Miller, writing for PJ Media, pointed out, if they're melting down over hearing someone question the Chinese Communist Party story on the virus origins, imagine how they'll freak out if anyone they pay attention to ever tells them that Hunter Biden's laptop is real, Dr. Fauci isn't exactly honest, or any number of things that they've taken as unassailable truth instead of as fake news. Well, luckily we didn't have that problem around here, since pointing out fake news and laughing at it is one of our favorite pastimes. And now, as we continue to follow the science, studies now show that shutdowns made little or no difference in the spread rate of COVID-19. But they did make a huge difference to our economy by destroying nearly 40% of small businesses in America. That's stunning, 40%. By the way, it includes over half of the businesses in the leisure and hospitality industries. However, by allowing big box stores and major chains to stay open, but forcing small businesses to close, even if they follow the same safety rules, the shutdowns resulted in a huge transfer of wealth from the middle class to the rich. Now, you'd think because of that, so-called progressives would agree with me that it is way past time for the lockdowns to end. Yet many, like California Governor Gavin Newsom, continue to resist letting people reopen their businesses. The only conclusion that I can draw from this is that no matter how much leftists talk about the suffering of the poor and middle class or the unfairness of wealth inequality, all that becomes perfectly acceptable if it means increasing government power. Well, on to the Twitterverse, and a shout out to the Babylon Bee for this one. Quote, Kim Jong-un attends Ivy League University to learn new brainwashing techniques, end quote. My response, hey parents, you too can spend your family fortune sending your kids to Ivy League schools. And to that point, I appeared on Sean Hannity's show just the other night with a brave young lady who actually did escape from North Korea. She went on to attend an Ivy League school. You know what she said? Quote, "Even North Korea was not this nuts," end quote. And by the way, you can follow Yeonmi Park on Twitter at YeonmiNK, where curiously, most of her tweets are marked sensitive content, presumably because the communists who run Twitter can't handle anyone breaking the programming. At least they don't have any gulags for us. Well, not yet. Here is a shame on you to a court in Colorado that decided that Baker Jack Phillips just hasn't been harassed enough. Phillips, who has been on our television show on TBN, previously won a partial victory in a landmark case after he refused to bake a cake for a same-sex wedding. Just a few years later, he's been back in court, this time because he didn't want to make a gender transition cake. Here's what his legal team's response was after the court's decision. I quote here, "In this case, an activist attorney demanded Jack create custom cakes in order to test Jack and correct the errors of his thinking. And the activist even threatened to sue Jack again in court if the case is dismissed for any reason. Radical activists and government officials are targeting artists like Jack because they won't promote messages on marriage and sexuality that violate their core convictions. It represents a disturbing trend, the weaponization of our justice system to ruin those with whom the activists disagree." End of quote. In other words, it's cancel culture, and with the force of law now behind it. Finally, I'm going to really tempt the YouTube censorship algorithm by giving a shout out to Republican Congressman Tom Massey, who responded this way when a reporter asked him if he was vaccinated.
I just want to, number one, you didn't answer whether or not you've been vaccinated.
Well, first of all, it's none of your business, but I'm going to tell you, I'm not vaccinated. And until there's some science, by the way, I have a master's of science degree from MIT. I'm not a virologist, but I can read data. Everybody just needs to read. And don't put your head in the sand. Look at the data.
Follow the science, right? But of course, it was never about the science. It was just another way to say, do as you're told. Well, until next time, these have been the facts of the matter.
Thanks so much for watching, and I hope you enjoyed that video. If you did, be sure to leave a like, then subscribe, and hit the notification bell below. Now, if you didn't like it, you ought to find a Ben Shapiro video to detox you with more facts.